So this lesson is about segments and angles. So we'll learn about how to measure segments, and then we'll learn quite a bit about how to identify angles, how to name angles, and how to measure angles. So there's quite a bit with angles that we're going to work with. So start off measuring a segment. So remember, a segment is something that has two endpoints. So like, for example, A, B, that's a segment. So in this example, we want to find the length of segment MN. So what we're going to do to find the length of MN, and this is similar to what you'll do in MathXL, we'll find point M. So here's point M. And then we'll find point N. Here's point N. And then to find the length of MN, we're just going to count the number of spaces in between. So in between M and N, here's 1, 2, 3. So this is 3. So there's 3 spaces, and they want us to call those spaces centimeters. So this is 3 centimeters. So the length of MN is, I'm just going to write 3 here because I don't have enough room to write centimeters. So the length of MN is 3 centimeters. PQ, so now I'm going to go to the segment that has P and Q. So that there's P and Q. That's a segment. The length between P and Q, the space, there's only one space in between P and Q. So this is 1 centimeter. So PQ is 1 centimeter. Now for part B, are segments MN and PQ congruent? So are those two segments congruent? So remember, we define this term, and we use it a couple times in area, but we're going to use it a lot more now. Congruent means they have the same measure. So if in part A, MN is 3, PQ is 1, those are not the same, so these are not congruent. Now, if those were both 3, then I would say that these are congruent. But those are not, or if they were both 1, I could say they were congruent. But since these are not the same number, these are not congruent. Example 2. So if DI, so segment DI is 50. So here's segment DI. So it has those 2 dots that I just put on that segment. So DI is 50 and DF is 30. Find FI. So here's DI. This length is 50. We don't know, we could call it like 50 units if we wanted to. So it's 50 units. DF, so from D to F, so from here to here is 30. We want to figure out how big is it from here to here. So what's this length? So what is FI? So we can use the information that we know. We know DI is 50, so we know the whole length is 50. And we know DI, so some of this length is 30. What's the other length? So I'm going to say, to find this blue length, I'm going to do DI minus DF. In other words, I'm going to do 50 minus 30 to get 20. So the length of that segment is 20. So FI is 20. So that's how long FI is. And this is pretty much going to do it for measuring segments in MathXL. This is all that you'll have to do. The next important piece, and the part that we're going to spend a lot of time on, is angles. So let's go ahead and define first what an angle is. So an angle is formed by 2 rays that share an endpoint. We call the endpoint the vertex. So let me show you what I mean. So I have a diagram there for you, and I'll explain each part of the diagram. So in my diagram, I have ray N, M. That's my first ray. Then I have ray NO. That's my second ray. So I have those two rays share the letter N. They share that endpoint. They both have the endpoint of N. That's where both of those rays start. We call N the vertex. So the vertex is just a fancy name for saying it's the endpoint that those two rays share. And we usually denote this as an angle with this little half circle in there. It just shows me that this is an angle. So this is the angle I'm working with, is that green one that I marked. So the two rays that came together for this diagram are NM and NO. Those are my two rays. They join together to form this angle. So how do we name this angle? This is very important. So please make sure you write this. How do we name an angle? There's three ways to name any angle. The first way is we could name the angle with the vertex. So remember, that vertex is the endpoint that they share. So in the diagram, the endpoint that they share, that's this blue point that I'm making, that's N. So we could name it as angle. So we use like a little less than sign to represent the word angle. So we don't have to write the word angle out every time. So we write it as angle N. So this is one way that we could name this angle. We could name it angle N. Another way is we could name it with three letters. So whenever you're naming an angle, you either need to name it as the common endpoint that the two rays share, or with three letters. And all the letters, whenever you name an angle, have to be capitalized. Notice I use a capital N when I named angle N. So I could name, this angle, so angle symbol. I could start with the first ray. So I could start here at M, and then go to N, and then go to O. So M, N, O. The other way that I could name this angle is I could start at O. I could name it O, N, M. So I could name it as angle O, N, M. So those are the three ways that I can name it. Notice I used only capital letters when I named it. And this is very important. The vertex always has to be the middle letter. So the endpoint that those both share, that N, so that endpoint, or what we call the vertex, always has to be the middle letter. So it always has to be in the middle of the other two letters. So when we join two rays together, we can get four types of angles. We could get a right angle. A right angle measures 90 degrees. So a right angle looks like this. So I would have, here's one ray, here's my other ray. And you're going to typically see a 90-degree angle shown with like a little box in the corner like that. All that means that this angle measures 90 degrees. It's a right angle. An obtuse angle has a measure that is greater than 90. So obtuse angles are greater than 90 degrees. So here's my ray. My other ray would look something like that. So it would be this is the angle that I'm referring to. This is 90 degrees or more than 90 degrees. An acute angle is an angle measure that is less. that is less than 90 degrees. So this would look smaller than a right angle. So here's one ray, then my other ray would look like that. This is the angle that I'm referring to. So it's less than 90. And the last one is the straight angle, or what we call a line. So a straight angle measures exactly 180 degrees. So it looks like this. So it would just be a straight line. And you could put your vertex right there. So those are the 4 types of angles that we have. The right angle, which measures 90, the obtuse, which is greater than 90, the acute, which is less than 90, and a straight line, which measures 180 degrees. So let's practice naming angles and then identifying what type of angle we have. So example number 1. So remember, to name an angle, we could name the common endpoint. Remember, we called that the vertex. So we can name it with the vertex or with 3 letters. But remember, the vertex always has to be in the middle. So for example 1, I could name this. Here's the vertex, is B, because here's one ray and here's the other ray. So I could name this as angle B. I could name it as angle ABC. And we could also name it as angle CBA. And then we need to identify, is it a right angle, an obtuse angle, acute, or it's just straight line. So here, this angle, so remember this little half circle tells me this is the angle I'm working with. So this little angle is less than 90 degrees, so we call it acute. Example number 2. So find the vertex. So here's the vertex, because here's ray number 1 and here's ray number 2. So the common endpoint is E, so we could name this angle E. We could also name this angle DEF. Or we could name it, if we start with F, we can name it FED. Remember that the vertex always has to be in the middle whenever you name an angle. This, they show you, has that special right angle symbol, that little box in the corner. So this is a right angle. Number 3 and 4, I want you to give those a try. Pause the video and try them, and then when you unpause it, you'll be able to see the answers. So hopefully you gave this a try. So for number 3, we could name it angle H, we could name it angle GHI, or we could name it IHG. So those are the 3 ways we can name it, and this angle is bigger than 90, so it's obtuse. Number 4, that common endpoint is the point K, so we could name this angle K. We could name it angle JKL. We could name it angle LKJ. So angle K is an acute angle, so this is acute. You should be able to complete the first part of your Math Excel assignment. So you should be able to complete numbers 1 through 14 after viewing this video.